Hi! In my last video, I talked about why you might want to get a literary agent. This time, I want to say how I actually got a literary agent. And I'm so thrilled because now I have a book coming out in about a year, and this is the beginning of how it happened. First, I needed an agent. Well, and of course, first I needed a book. So I had written and written, and now I was ready to look for an agent. So my first stop was Google, and I typed in, literary agent. And what I found is that there are quite a few websites that have listings of agents. Publishers Market and Writers Market, Poets and Writers, agentquery.com, Query Tracker. You'll see all of these. And they usually have a way to screen out, like put parameters on the search. And so if you need romance, if you need sci-fi, fantasy, you put that in your search bar, and then you'll get this list of agents. So that's what I did. I put in literary and middle grade because I thought that's about what I was looking for. I wasn't totally sure that my book was a middle grade book. I thought it might be a young adult book. I thought it might be an adult book even. And my agent actually helped me figure out which was the best age range for my book. So that's another great thing the agent did. But once I got a listing of like 50 agents who were all publishing the kind of book that my book is, well, then I had to do some homework. So that's your next step. Research these agents. Now, of course, you want a reputable agent. So find out what their background is, other books they've represented. Google search is a good start. Most agents want to be found, so they're not trying to hide. They may have done interviews, look for that. They may have a track record, like how many rejections do they send versus acceptances. You should be able to find out something about the agent. A brand new agent is not necessarily bad. Sometimes brand new agents are the most hungry for manuscripts, and they'll take on a little riskier work or an author they're not totally sure about. So that's not necessarily bad, but be careful because some agents actually run a publishing wing, house, sort of house. What they're doing is they're having a little independent press alongside their agenting. So instead of selling your book to other houses, they're going to probably recommend eventually that they publish your book. And I would be a little nervous about that. You would want to know whether this publishing house is going to really get your work in front of people's eyes. Can they put it at Barnes and Noble? Now, in this day and age of self-publishing and everything, are they really going to give you something that you couldn't get yourself? So if the press is tiny enough, you might be better off publishing on your own. But if you're going to traditionally publish, and then you want a regular agent who will sell your book to the big publishers. Okay, so you got to research your agent, do your homework on your agent. Now, you'll probably find in your homework that your agent likes certain things. Like I found out that some agents like voice, or some agents say, I want a quirky main character. And so when I wrote my query letter to those agents, I included that language. And I actually said, well, I saw in an interview that you like this, and so my book has that thing. I tried not to word it so clunkily like that, but I just included that little phrase, or I showed that my book was that kind of book without even saying the phrase. All right, so step 3. Okay, once you find out names of some agents. Number 2, research those agents. So number 3 is send them a query letter. And we still say query letter, even though this letter will be an email because we're in the digital age. So you're going to craft an email. And I'll show you my actual query letter here. Okay, this is the email that I sent. And it starts in a formal way, Dear Miss Grimm. And ahead of that, which I'm not showing on the screen, is my contact information, my address, my full name, my cell phone number, and I've structured it like a business letter, even though it's email. So I use the first paragraph to talk about the book I use the second paragraph to talk about me and why I have credentials to write the book. And you can see that I've kept it quite short. These agents don't have much time, so I need to start with what's called a hook. I feel like my hook is not that strong, but it does say that my main character is biracial. Her name is Quijana, and that she lives in this Guatemalan-American hyphen. I'm hoping that that is interesting and unusual, and will keep Katie Grimm reading. So you start with the hook. Then you talk about the book. And the book itself, in this case, is, I'm just saying that it's more of a coming-of-age story than anything else. I mentioned that Quijana is a Latina who speaks next to zero Spanish. And then I mentioned how many words the book is. It was really small at this time. It ended up being 60,000 words, but it was only 25,000 at this point. And I try to use a little bit of my style. I have a poetic literary style from being trained as a poet. So I say that she goes from feeling like a pile of pieces to a whole puzzle. And this is very much the voice of the book. So I'm giving a sense, a little taste of how I write, what the writing style is. The tone of this paragraph should be punchy, interesting. It should try to get the agent's attention. Sometimes this language is actually reused in the front flap of the book or the back flap of the book. So you want to make it good. It's almost harder than writing the novel, I think. So you start with the hook, then you talk about the book, including the word count. I also included a comparison book. This is called Comp Titles, and it stands for comparison titles. So other books that have a similar structure, a similar audience. In the case of House on Mango Street, it's a famous book by Sandra Cisneros that does show a Latina coming of age. And so that is similar, but it's more than that. The similarity extends beyond that. My book was a series of vignettes and episodes, kind of like House on Mango Street was. At this point, it's not a full novel, and I want to signal that to the agent. I don't want that to be a surprise when she reads the enclosed excerpt. So I mentioned that, and it's good to have a comp title anyway to give, I guess, to let the agent know that you've done your homework and you know what kinds of books are out there. In my case, I chose kind of an old book, so it was a good comp title in some ways, but a more recent comp title is a better bet. I also use the word novelita, which is a made-up word, but I do make up words, so again, it reflects my style, and it also gives her a heads up that this isn't a typical novel, because at this point it was just a series of vignettes and episodes. So you start with the hook, then the book, and then the cook. So I've heard this at writing conferences, that you want those three parts, the hook, the cook, and the hook, the book, and the cook. So this second paragraph is all about me, previous publications, my schooling, what I do now that relates to my writing. So if I have experiences in my life, like going skydiving, that don't relate to the book, then I will not include that here. I focus on my publications and qualifications, and I include this last bit, YouTube 6 Minute Scholar, that's my YouTube channel, in order to let her know that I'm out in the social media world, and at this point, I only had 3,000 subscribers. Now I have 15,000. So I see how that's not all that impressive, maybe. But I did include anything that would let her know that I'm qualified to write this book and that I'm a serious writer. And if you're brand new and you don't have publications, then I would just not say that right out. I would just say, I have life experience that helps me write this book. I included that here, the daughter of a Peace Corps mom and a Guatemalan dad. I have lived the challenges that my character faces. So I have personal background that makes me qualified to write the book. If I didn't have any publications, I would probably just say that. I mentioned my job, again, only because it relates to writing. I'm a professor of English, so, I know my commas and I hopefully know good sentence structure and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that works as a qualification. And then I include my website. She certainly could click that and find out more about me if she wanted to know what kind of person I am and, get more information. My website has since been updated. This one was a real poet-looking website rather than a children's writer's website. And then she asked in her guidelines that I include 25,000 words of the manuscript. Oh, I'm sorry, not 25,000. That's the whole manuscript. But she asked that I include something like 10 pages or whatnot. So I did. I included some of the manuscript as she requested. And so you always want to give them what they request. You don't want to give them 10 chapters if they ask for one chapter. Do whatever it is they want. So after this query went out, I got, of course, rejections. Now the query I sent to Katie Grimm actually came back with a request to see more of the manuscript. And that's your dream. That's when you can jump up and down and have a party. But what happened with the other query letters I sent out, I got rejections. And my numbers, let's see, I sent out 20. I just decided I'm going to send 20. And they can take a while to get back to you. So I didn't want to just send to one and wait for a rejection and then send to a second one and wait for rejection. I had decided I would just send to 20 agents. And I didn't send them all the very same day, but I had done my homework on like 5 agents, so I sent to that group. Then I did, had other names on a list and I sent to that group. So over the course of like 2 days, I sent to 20 agents. And I tweaked that cover letter to reflect what that agent seemed to want. And in Katie Grimm's case, I knew that she cared a lot about character, so I emphasized that. And then I sat back and waited for the rejections. And indeed, I received them. And I'll actually show you a couple right here. Thank you so much for allowing our agency to consider your material. This is a fairly standard rejection. It doesn't show a lot of personal comments. She's not giving me special advice. It's just like, thank you, good luck, don't give up, etc., etc. So they've decided my project is not right for them. The other one, while it sounds promising, it's not a perfect fit for me, I'm going to regretfully pass. That's actually a little nicer. It makes it sound like maybe this person actually read it or read part of it, and they wish me good luck. And here's the thing. I got, out of sending 20 queries, I got quite a few straight out rejections like these, probably 10. And then I got a handful who did want to see more, very few. And then I got a handful who's like never answered and it just went into a black hole. So you can see that these are examples of the kinds of no's that you're likely to get. So you can see that agents are very polite when they reject you, and a lot of times they're just using some canned language because they get many, many, many of these queries every day. And they're quickly skimming that letter, trying to see if there's something really special there that they want more of, or whether they can just go ahead and reject it, which is what they do, a whole bunch of the time, most of the time. So I got all these rejections. Don't let it worry you. It doesn't mean your book is terrible. Although I think if I had gotten like 50, maybe I would have thought, well, maybe my query letter needs some work, or maybe my book needs to be revised. But until I got working with an agent, I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to take the book revisions. So it's actually good that I didn't change the book too much before getting the agent. Okay, so when I finally got the letter back from, or the email back from Katie saying, hey, I am interested in your book, it was not entirely like done yet. Like she wasn't ready to represent me yet. So the first thing that happened is an email came back saying, hey, I'm interested, send me more. And so I did. And this is called getting a request for a full. Now, sometimes you don't get a request for a full manuscript. What you get is a partial, like, well, I'd like to see 10 chapters, or I'd like to see the first half. And so you send them whatever they ask for. Katie asked for the whole thing, probably because it was so short. So I sent her the whole thing. And fairly soon, within a week or so, she was getting back to me. And she sent me a long email that showed she had read this thing thoroughly, carefully. She showed a lot of care and attention. And she said, I think this book is similar to this other book or that other book. But then she laid it on the line for me. She said, if you really want this book to be a middle grade novel, it's going to need some writing. It's going to need some bulking up. It's too short, and it's got some plot missing. And she said, if you want to send this in the other direction of a book of poems, well then, maybe you won't need to do much rewriting at all. But who would you really like to sell this book to? So she put the ball back in my court. Using her knowledge of what would sell, she laid it out for me. If you really want to write a middle grade novel, hey, I'm interested in that. And if you want to write a book of poems, well, she doesn't really represent poets. And so I would be going in a new direction to an independent press, maybe a university press. And I've already had a book of poems published, so I kind of knew how I might go about that. But I had a new wish for this book. I wanted a different outcome for this book. So I did want to write a mainstream novel. And if she thought middle graders were the best audience, then I trusted her. And I said, okay, I will rewrite this book as a novel for middle grade readers. And I spent the summer rewriting. I went and created new scenes. I created more of a plot arc. And I sent it to her again at the end of the summer. And this time she said, aha, let's have a phone call. And that's when you can also jump up and down and be happy, because a phone call is a good sign. It means that she wants to see if I'm a reasonable, friendly person, if I might be fairly easy to work with, get a sense of who I am. Because she lives in New York, and so we can't just have coffee or something. Also, she's too busy to have coffee anyway. So I said, yes, I'd love to talk to you. And we did have a phone call, and it was like over an hour long. And we talked all about the book. And she had even more suggestions about how to make it a stronger novel. And I had to show willingness to work on the book. Now, if you are the kind of person who is absolutely not going to revise one word, then you're going to have a hard time finding an agent, because the agent wants to help you shine up that book, polish it up, and maybe even make some structural changes. And in my case, I really needed to make some changes. And I thought that it was pretty close, but I was wrong. It turned out that I rewrote that book 4 times across the next year before she felt ready to go out with it, meaning to send the manuscript to publishers, which is her ultimate job and goal, is to sell this book. But she guided me and edited the book for a long time, a year before it was really ready. I added a climax, I added a cry moment, and she guided all of that revision. And at the same time, she was giving me suggestions on what to be reading, middle grade books that were kind of like my book, or middle grade books in general that would probably be useful for me to read. So I had to educate myself on the genre, since I didn't even know I was writing a middle grade book originally. So she helped me understand the genre better. Middle grade books, what's being published now, who's writing them, what do they sound like, what are the voices, how do they structure their books. And then she was guiding the rewrite of my book. So she really helped me a lot. And when she finally did send it out, that would be a story for another video. But ultimately, it did get an offer from Chronicle Books, and it is coming out. The book is coming out next year, so that'll be fall of 2019. So yay, thank you, Katie Grimm. She did a beautiful job. And that is how I got my agent.